Hi, I'm Nick Sholley, and this is 707. With me today is Ed Bowman, president and founder of Bowman College, which is a nutritional school. And I'm very happy that you could join us today, Ed. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Nick.
Yeah, we have a lot of ground to cover. So digging right in, we have a beautiful bowl of fruit and herbs in front of us, symbolic of a lot of what your life has been about thus far. So tell me a bit about your background and what brought you to this particular road.
Okay. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., in the inner city, and I had exposure to lots of interesting people, food, and culture. So that was really pretty cool. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was. And my folks were very open-minded and traveled, and I got to see the world.
So what did you see?
Well, I just saw variety. I saw diversity, variety, sights, smells, taste, all that. And I liked it. I was fascinated by it, fascinated by the other. I was never very much invested in middle-class American values. So I'd say from a very early age, I went, Mom, why are we having Velveeta cheese? Why are we drinking Tang? Why do you have this big red jar of Accent? Do you know what Accent was?
I don't.
It's MSG. So my mom was a good cook and a good shopper. So food was good in our home. It was homemade food. But she would lather on this chemical ingredient, monosodium glutamate. And in I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years old, I started to study health and learned a few things and questioned
what led you to
we were doing it. I don't know. I mean, I was just fascinated by it. Yeah. I like going shopping with my mom and picking out cantaloupes and smelling them and tasting them.
And so from that beginning at 12 or 13, really, well, from the very beginning, you were exposed to all these smells and tastes and different cultures, and you started asking certain questions. When did you ask the question about accent? Like, what is this stuff?
Well, it was high school. You know, I started doing science projects around food. So
what's the most memorable that you remember, the most memorable science project?
You know, it was sort of like trying to burn Velveeta cheese. And it wouldn't burn because it was a chemical. It was some kind of unusual oil. It was a hydrogenated synthetic fat. It wasn't really cheese.
So what kind of a kid were you? Were you somebody who always had something to say? Were you kind of a know-it-all? Or
Not really.
No?
I mean, I'm sly and subtle and witty. I used to write songs about my teachers. But I wasn't number one. I wasn't know-it-all or anything. I was mostly kind of a friendly guy and did well and moved on. Now, I had political aspirations.
Okay.
So growing up in D.C., I thought, well, maybe I'll be the president. Okay. So I went to law school. In Northeastern law, studied very progressive social law, make the world a better place. And then 1969, I went, I don't think it's going to work. I think the system is really
what was the
kind
moment?
of built for, well, I mean, Woodstock had an influence. I was at Woodstock. I think that was that same summer. And then a kid came to visit me from high school who was a vegetarian and did yoga, and the guy looked like he was glowing. And I go, what are you doing? You didn't look like that in high school. He said, well, I'm doing this lifestyle thing. And I went, I'm getting down that road. So I started eating rice-a-roni. The all-American treat.
The all-American treat.
So
it was rice. It was rice.
It was a start. It was a start. And then I dropped out of law school to the horror of my family. And I said, I want to study natural law, law of nature, law of spirit. I was starting to read Taoism. I was starting to study Buddhism. I was looking at Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So I'm 22, 23 years old.
Did your family come around in time?
When I was 40.
Okay.
So for 20 years, and then I moved to the country and bought a 160-acre organic farm outside of Amherst, Massachusetts,
Wow.
with friends. So there were 5 of us. We had a commune, and we grew food, and we had chickens, and we had cows, and we did meditation. We brought the first Vipassana meditation course to the United States.
Wow.
Because my friends were on the Ram Dass circuit, and they went to India with him. I didn't. And they came back, and then from the farm, I started an organic restaurant called Home Comfort. Again, everything I've done with people. There's no me, it's we.
Right.
I've been a collective guy always. I've usually been the team leader.
Okay.
But from growing a farm to a restaurant to cooking classes and a meeting center, I did all that in my 20s.
So where did the money come from? Was it just a collaborative venture?
Well, you know, our rent was $243 a month for split 5 ways.
That helps.
So again, we had kind of a socialistic economic setup where whoever made money went into the house fund, and then we bought it, we used it for whatever we needed, and then if somebody went on a trip, they may have had their own money.
So who were those people? Are they still there? Are they still in the farm?
My ex-wife and my ex-best friend
Okay.
are living on that property.
Wow.
And it's got to be $1 million, $2 million property now.
Sure.
But the thing is I went to naturopathic school. Because remember, I'm on this quest of natural health, natural medicine, healing from the earth.
So where did you go?
I went to Taos, New Mexico.
Okay.
And I studied with a man named William Lasassier, who's since passed on. But I had the experience of meeting Ann Wigmore in Boston, who was chlorophyll and sprouts. I had the experience of sitting with Michio Kushi, who was the macrobiotic. I had the experience
who is he? The
macrobiotic man from Japan who brought in that thing. So we're talking early 70s. I'm in my young middle 20s, and I'm meeting all these interesting people who are in their 70s.
Who are pretty much the
pioneers. And Bernard Jensen, Nature Has a Remedy, and bowel cleansing. You know, the key to health and disease prevention and recovery is intestinal cleansing. So I met all these folks. I found a piece of everything they said to be interesting, but I never found the whole piece well represented. So I came to California. I left the East Coast. I left my wife. I left my farm, which I loved. I really did like it there. It was cool. But I came to Berkeley to do holistic health and holistic nutrition. And I was one of the people who coined the phrase holistic with an H. Again, one can never say they're the first because there's antecedents for everything. There's nothing really new under the sun.
Nothing's new.
But I
the way
created
you brought it all together.
The Berkeley Holistic Health Center with colleagues. I wrote a book called The Holistic Health Handbook in '77, which sold 250,000 copies.
Well, we'll stop there and come back with the next phase and come back to join us with Ed Bowman on 707. Hi, this is Nick Sholley, and I'm back on 707 with Ed Bowman for the second part of our talk. And we were just getting to Berkeley, the beginnings of Bowman College. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you to that point where you're like, I'm going to start a school?
Well, I wanted to be a nutrition consultant. I'm an educator. I got a master's degree at University of Massachusetts in an incredible program that really shaped my educational approach about really person-centered learning, independent critical thinking, self-responsibility. So that was in my genes from my graduate school in Amherst. When I came to Berkeley, I started a center with colleagues. The book was successful. We started a clinic. So by 1978, 79, we had 3 medical doctors. We had acupuncturists, chiropractic, body workers. I was the nutrition consultant, and we had 100 classes a quarter. So it was a model of treatment, person-based treatment, and community education in the Berkeley area, what seemed to be a hotbed at that time.
Fantastic. So Berkeley Sonoma.
Okay.
There was, talk a little bit about
From Berkeley, I'd come up to Sebastopol and Katati to get to the country, to get to some trees, to get some good apples, to hang out, get out of the city. Well, I can't go through the long story, but I went to grad school at University of New Mexico. My dad was an orthodontist, so he had a medical background. And he said, son, you really look like you're into this thing. I would think you would do better if you were a doctor. So why don't you get a PhD? So I went to New Mexico because they had an interesting doctorate in health promotion, community health promotion.
Okay.
So I went there, and I liked New Mexico. I liked the food. I liked the Indians, the Hispanic, the whole 9 yards. And then nutrition was outlawed in New Mexico. So I spoke to the political board going, why are you making dietetics the only...
Nutrition was outlawed.
Well, dietetics became the only valid practice, and anyone doing other forms of nutrition advising, it was a felony.
Wow.
So while I'm in grad school, I argued against it, and they tried to kick me out of grad school. I go, come on, people, I'm a nutritionist. I came to grad school. I'm about 40 at this point. So that was all kind of strange. It was just the argument.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I'm going to just go back to California, and I'm going to teach holistic nutrition. And I started with the school that was existing, and that school changed hands. And the next thing you knew, there I was in Kotati with the first school under a nonprofit called the Institute for Educational Therapy, which is still the nonprofit that directs Bowman College.
Where was this, in Kotati?
In Kotati, across from Zone Music.
Okay.
If you know where that is, on Old Redwood Highway.
Right.
So the first school was 1989, and it was nutrition and culinary arts, because I love cooking. I love food. I love spices. I love eating. Nutrition is food. It's not pills.
That was how you sparked your initial interest.
That's the thread.
From childhood, right?
And that's still really where the juice is in fresh, whole, local, powerful foods that are lovingly prepared. Yes. So I wrote curriculum, just like I wrote that holistic health book. I sat down and I wrote curriculum, and then I started to write textbooks.
So let's just take a little break, a little bit of a sidetrack, talking about your perspective on what's wrong with this country right now in terms of how we eat, and why haven't people gotten the message?
Well, honestly, it's media saturation, it's business saturation through the media. So little babies and mothers and everyone is, seeing all this, happy food and packaged food and all that.
But still, senses are being appealed to, right? It's the color, even if it's artificial, still, we're taught to eat a rainbow now, but we've been eating artificial rainbows for a long time.
I would say the food system has really been altered adversely. The soil has been damaged. The seeds have been changed. The growing patterns, the whole thing has gotten really far from what it could be, should be, and will be, because there is a renaissance at this point where we're doing local farming and organic farming and biodynamic and farmers markets, and people can grow herbs and spices on their window box or do some plants in their backyard. So that's really important to see, but we're going through a 50-year cycle where people have been sort of sold bad food, and it's built disease.
Yes.
So it's an inevitability that people who follow the American way of eating will have some of the premature conditions they're dealing with.
And there's a question too of cost, like how much it costs to eat, quote, right, and people thinking that they're eating less expensively, but really it's probably not less expensive down the road.
To go back a step, when I started teaching, and I then had a school, I created a model called Eating for Health. So rather than the Ed thing, the Bowman thing, and Bowman College seems a little presumptuous to me to be alive and have a school named after me. But really the message is eating for health. And that's really looking at this seasonal local food and a mandala, kind of a plate where seeds and nuts are at the center of it. Seeds are at the center of the food system. And then there's oils, and then there's proteins, and then there's a category called booster foods, which is a term I coined, where you get the herbs and the spices and the seaweeds and the algae and the nutritional yeast, some of these condiments that I gleaned from macrobiotics, and I gleaned from Asian food and from various cultures, about how to really enrich
how
foods.
all these foods work in
And bam, synergistically and flavorifically. So the idea is, I just made that up.
Yeah.
The idea is really, it's like dazzling and exciting and wonderful.
Yeah.
So you could talk about it, but if we do something and I go, try this, and you go, whoa, nice. That's the idea of eating for health and then cooking for health and then training people to teach others. So the whole game is education through experience.
And as much as anything, you're retraining the senses and the palate. And, appealing to...
And a little bitter, salty, savory, spicy is interesting. And, then it's just how you do it. So, but the question is, the culture is kind of mediocritized. And the food system has really been corrupted. So speaking out against that is actually a risk, because big whatever doesn't like that.
Just as it was a risk to
always
be anything other
has
than a
been, but the
dietitian,
thing is, more and more people are going, how do I get well? What can I do? And nutrition is a part, it's not the part.
And there is a question of cost too.
Yes.
So for people, if that were a concern, and it is.
It is. Cost is always a concern.
What would you say to people? What are the steps, small steps, the smallest steps somebody might take?
Seasonal food is less expensive. So right now we're in the fall. Whoops, my basket.
There's a basket.
Right now we have persimmons. Most people don't eat persimmons. They don't really know what it is. They're giving persimmons away, or it's falling on the ground.
Right.
And there's tangerines, which are really beautiful food. So eating seasonally, you're getting surplus. And you buy locally at the farmer's market or the local market or something, or you grow a little bit yourself, your cost goes way down. So the new American is not a hunter and gatherer, they're shoppers.
Okay.
So shopping is the hunting,
Yeah.
and learning how to shop and where to get legit food.
Start shopping outside the box.
Yeah. And like, we got to read labels. Well, there's no label.
There's no label
on something, but you look at the color, the smell, the taste, you get the indication. And I got that from my mom, picking cantaloupes when I was 12 years old. She would tap and smell and say, that's the one, Ed. And I go, yeah.
So you trust all your senses as you hunt and gather?
Multisensorily, and even kind of intuitively, energetically, something shines. You look at broccoli, like some broccoli looks bad and old and tired, and some like goes, whoa, eat me, I can walk.
And we'll follow the broccoli when we come back. Thank you very much for joining us, 707 with Dr. Ed Bowman, our final segment coming up. Hi, I'm Nick Sholley. Welcome back to 707, where we're talking with Dr. Ed Bowman. And I wanted to come back to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And how that happened. And this is kind of food as medicine, so it's where we've been headed anyway. But what led that involvement to what formerly was Palm Drive Hospital and now is West?
It's called the Sonoma West Medical Center in Sebastopol.
Sonoma West.
Alrighty, so here I am. I'm running a school, having exciting people, including your wife, who go to school there. I go, I want jobs for these people. We need to work. People want to work and people want to learn. I want to go medical. I want to bring health and medicine together. So I became a board member of the hospital, Palm Drive Hospital. I then became president of the board because I have presidential skills. I have leadership skills. And I have great diplomacy and good nature, and I don't get caught up in stuff. So when the old hospital faded out, some of the doctors and some of the community members, including myself, said, let's bring in a new one. Let's have regeneration, life after death. So we did. So it's the first time a district hospital is closed and reopened. And there's a certain amount of question about, will it work? It didn't work before. But what I did with my colleagues, remember, we, not me, was an integrated health institute. And I had 4 parts. Inpatient care. So an inpatient could get good food, and we had organic food. We had Chef Rob from Series Project, who was our chef. We had inpatient acupuncture, massage, hands-on healing, emotional counseling, Reiki, inpatient and outpatient clinical work, because when people come in with a heart attack, a stroke, a surgery, or whatever, they need to know why and how to prevent that. So we built a clinic across the street, outpatient services and research. So I'm working with Dr. Alan Bernstein, our foundation's created a research institute to study brain health, aging, Alzheimer's prevention, and recovery, all through the Sonoma West Medical Center in Sebastopol. So I keep moving the game up a little bit, you know, from farming to food to teaching to alternative to integrative to in the building, in the hospital, and doing classes. I taught eating for health classes for free at the hospital.
How is it going?
Good.
It's going good?
Yeah. You wouldn't know that from the papers.
Right. Well, they want to tell a certain story.
They won't even print good stories.
Yeah.
So it's curious, just like with, you know, political and the whole thing, is there's some kind of like, you know,
there's a negativity bias.
There's a heavy one.
Right.
And things that are fresh and natural and independent and empowering, that's the good news.
So how do we keep the good news pushing through?
Well, shows like this.
Okay.
People need to know their community. The news is not what you read in the paper. The news is what you hear from your friends and family. And so at Sonoma West and other places, I have Bowman grads working at Sutter, working at Kaiser, working at Out the Bates. I did a whole employee wellness program for 7 clinics in the East Bay.
So trusting your own direct experience, as with food, trusting your own direct experience of what you're hearing from people, and anecdotally, friends of yours who might be eating a little differently. And what would you say is a reduction of health costs by this method? I mean, is there any statistical research?
You know, it's substantial. It's usually $1 spent is $3 to $4 saved.
Okay.
So that's the big deal. Over the course of a lifetime, obviously diabetes and cancer are very expensive. Now, with the new Trump era, I wrote a note to my colleagues at school who were crying and rolling over. I go, there's opportunity here. With deregulation, I saw Newt Gingrich 5 years ago, and he said health savings accounts is the way to go. And with health savings, you can see an alternative practitioner.
People can decide.
You can see who you want to see. Well, okay, so Big Daddy doesn't pay for it, but you're saving your money, and the money that we've been spending will be saved. And all the big medical centers want prevention because it's cost saving.
It's cost
They want what
effective,
you do. They want what I do. So our platform is group education because it's too expensive one-on-one, one-on-one, one-on-one.
Sure.
1 on 15, that's cost effective.
That's cost effective. So getting back to education or getting back to whatever's next, because I feel like this feeds into something.
Yeah.
What's energetically, what do you feel is up for you?
Well, 2 things. My most recent book is The Flavors of Health.
Flavors of Health.
So it's a nutritional cookbook with stories and information to inspire people. So doing Flavors of Health classes, workshop, and tours. I was just in Costa Rica for a month. I love Costa Rica. There's really chi there, pura vida, and great people, great culture, and great food.
Well, it's chi in that, you know, this is back to the land, too.
Totally.
It's incredibly
verdant.
The
air, the water, the plants.
And the food. Everything is local.
You know, people go, the food is dull. Food is good. And there's plants there that we don't have here.
Yeah.
And so forth. So I see bringing people on trips and tours and learning about culture and food and farming and healing.
So Costa Rica is the next Sonoma County for you, possibly.
It is, yeah. But don't everybody go there.
Okay.
But I mean, really what we need is to restore.
Sure.
Restore the soil, the air, the water, the plants, and protect, and then teach. And so I've done some videos, nutritional cooking videos.
Okay.
See, I'm good with supplements. I'm good with cancer, mental health, diabetes, all that metabolic disease. And the kind of functional medicine stuff is really accelerating, but it's largely expensive, and it's largely still pill dependent.
So can you talk a little bit more about any collaborations that you have going on with other sort of up-and-coming folks, other than the obvious?
I just retired from my school.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean I retired from my life. If anything, I now have more creative independence, and I still have good energy. So I've been in conversation with different groups locally, nationally, and internationally. And for what it's worth, I will toss an opportunity to the administration. Because I'm a political guy. I grew up in D.C. I have kind of a political instinct and a spiritual one. I mean, my work is based on spirit. I'm a Baha'i. And Baha'i really wants to make the world a better place and believe there's oneness of mankind.
For those who don't know, myself included, what is Baha'i?
So Baha'i is a religion, and it came 200 years ago out of Iran or Persia, where there was a revelation through a man who's called Baha'u'llah, who said, New World Order, oneness, there's no separation between men and women, between countries. We're all part of the same world, which is, again, the new think that many of us have. And that there will be leadership in government that will evolve from a spiritual point of view. So being a Baha'i influenced my graduate education. My teachers were Baha'is. It just coincidentally. Meeting my second wife, who I'm 35 years happily married to, she's a Baha'i. I went, having a child like you. Yeah, Baha'i is good because it doesn't negate. It doesn't compete.
It's additive.
It builds on all the teachings are good. And we need new teachings for a new time, so there's guidance there.
So wrapping it up, Ed, there's so much we could talk about, and really could have a whole other session.
Well, let's do.
But for now,
yes,
you mentioned some policy changes and how to kind of bring the current administration, in whatever form it may take, into more of a nutritional, food for health perspective.
Yes.
What would be?
First of all, personal. Second of all, family. Third of all, community. Fourth of all, data and research. They love data and research. So I teach my students how to do that when they go through school. They have to study people and do pre and post and behavior change and health outcome. So I'm now working with a hospital. I'm now working with a research institute. We'll generate a model. Just like my earliest models were new and different, Whole Food Restaurant, 1973, to Berkeley Holistic, to Bowman College, and retreats. You do retreats, I do retreats, 30 years of doing fasting and rejuvenation programs.
It's funny how they call it a retreat, but it really is a return to self.
Yes.
It's a return to the best parts of us, ideally.
So kind of group adventures, because I'm Ed, and I'm an educator. So Adventures is really kind of where I'm wanting to go because it's fun and it's good.
Well, here's to whatever's next in the Adventure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ed.
My pleasure. It's been great.
It's been really a great talk.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on 707. Our guest again, Dr. Ed Bowman of Bowman College and Adventuring Forward.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
You're welcome.